Humanity. A species once thought to be weak in the vastness of space. But one thing set us apart: our ability to adapt, create, and overcome. For centuries, Earth had been perfecting its technology, making its warships the envy of the galaxy. But what if the true weapon wasn't the warships themselves, but the brilliant minds that built them? Welcome to Starlight Sci-Fi, where today we dive into the story of how humanity's engineers changed the course of war and left even the most powerful alien forces in awe. What if the most powerful weapon in the universe wasn't our warships, but the minds behind them? While humanity's warships were capable of devastating firepower, it was the ingenuity of Earth's engineers that turned the tide of the galaxy's most brutal conflict. The Zorathians, an alien race known for their immense strength and technology, feared our warships at first, but they soon realized that the real challenge lay not in the ships themselves, but in the minds of those who designed them. This is the untold story of how Earth's engineers redefined the rules of warfare and forced the universe to take notice. In the year 2134, humanity's place in the galaxy changed forever. For decades, we had looked to the stars with equal parts wonder and trepidation. When humanity finally achieved faster-than-light travel, we knew the chances of encountering intelligent life were no longer a question of if but when. Yet, despite centuries of science fiction preparing us for the moment, the reality of first contact was far more terrifying than anyone could have imagined. The Zorathians came without warning. Towering ships, each the size of a small city, emerged from a distant corner of space, their hulls glowing with alien energy. They were a species of conquerors, their history marked by the systematic subjugation of dozens of civilizations. For the Zorathians, Earth was just another wayward planet to crush beneath their colossal fleets. They didn't come to talk, to negotiate, or to learn. They came to conquer. Humanity's response was swift. Decades of preparation had culminated in the design of Earth's first interstellar war fleet, a collection of sleek, adaptive starships bristling with advanced weaponry and shielded by quantum-based defensive systems. These ships weren't just tools of war, they were symbols of humanity's resilience, built in the hope that they might one day protect us from an enemy just like this. The Zorathians expected an easy victory. In their arrogance, they believed humanity was nothing more than a minor nuisance, a species barely capable of interstellar travel. After all, they had faced hundreds of civilizations, each falling within days under the overwhelming might of the Zorathian armada. They didn't anticipate resistance, let alone a fight that would challenge their supremacy. But when the first human fleet engaged the Zorathians in the Ross 128 star system, the invaders encountered something they had never faced before: unpredictability. Human ships darted through the battlefield with precision, their adaptive weapons tearing through the Zorathian shields in ways that defied standard tactics. The Zorathians responded with overwhelming force, their massive vessels launching devastating plasma strikes, but to their shock, the humans adapted. Quantum shielding absorbed the attacks, redirecting energy in ways that not even the Zorathians' advanced scanners could comprehend. It wasn't just technology that confused the Zorathians, it was the sheer ingenuity of human tactics. Human engineers had designed ships to think on their feet, responding to threats in real time and modifying systems on the fly. Battles that should have been decisive Zorathian victories ended with their retreat. The mighty invaders, for the first time in centuries, tasted the bitter sting of defeat. For humanity, the battles were not only a defense of their home, but a declaration: Earth was not a planet to be underestimated. Yet even as the first victories were celebrated, questions lingered. Why had the Zorathians underestimated them so badly? And what had they truly feared when they first saw humanity's ships? The initial victories against the Zorathians were nothing short of astonishing. The invading force, renowned for its military prowess and ruthless efficiency, had expected to steamroll through Earth's defenses. Yet the human fleet had held its ground, and even pushed the enemy back. The Zorathians retreated in confusion, unwilling to face further humiliation, but their quick withdrawal sparked more questions than answers. How could humanity, a species that had barely emerged from its own solar system, defy the odds and withstand the might of a galactic empire? Human commanders, curious and driven, knew that the Zorathians would soon regroup. Despite their retreat, the alien invaders weren't likely to abandon their goal. This wasn't just about conquering a small planet. It was about crushing the threat before it could grow. The question was no longer how to defend, but how to understand their enemy. If the Zorathians feared humanity enough to retreat so quickly, there had to be more to the story than just a well-equipped fleet. In the weeks that followed, Earth's intelligence services worked tirelessly to decrypt Zorathian communications, combing through intercepted transmissions for any clue as to why the Zorathians had been so cautious. What they discovered was startling. It wasn't humanity's military strength alone that had caused the retreat, it was something far more unsettling. A phrase appeared again and again in the alien messages, one that piqued the interest of every analyst involved: the engineers of Terra. At first, the meaning of the phrase was unclear. The Zorathians spoke of humanity's warships as a nuisance, a temporary hurdle. But the mention of the engineers, the creators, the masterminds behind the ships, was different. The fear they had of humanity didn't lie in the size or firepower of the warships, but in something far more intangible: human creativity. These engineers were responsible for the ships, yes, but they were also responsible for humanity's resilience. The Zorathians had no concept of such rapid innovation, of minds that could alter the course of a battle not through sheer force, but by designing systems that adapted and evolved in real time. What made the human engineers so dangerous to the Zorathians was their relentless ingenuity. For the Zorathians, war was a matter of overwhelming force, of bringing the largest, most advanced weapons to bear. But for humanity's engineers, every threat was a challenge, every obstacle an opportunity to design something new. The Zorathians were used to facing adversaries who followed predictable patterns, who relied on standard military strategies. But the engineers of Terra didn't think that way. They crafted technology that didn't just fight, they evolved, learned, and adapted with every encounter. As Earth's military leaders began to piece together this revelation, it became clear that humanity's greatest strength wasn't just its warships, but the brilliant minds behind them. And with this understanding, the question shifted: how could the human engineers be stopped? The Zorathians had already discovered the answer the hard way. They could not. The revelation about the engineers of Terra had a profound effect on the Zorathians. They were a species accustomed to domination, to facing civilizations that followed predictable patterns, easily broken by superior firepower and brute force. But humanity had proven itself different. It wasn't just that their ships could resist and repel the Zorathian onslaught. It was that every time the aliens attacked, the humans adapted. What began as a war of military strength had quickly turned into a battle of intellect and innovation, something the Zorathians had never fully understood. The Zorathian leadership, shaken by their inability to subdue Earth, knew that their next move would have to be more calculated. It wasn't just enough to send more ships into battle, they needed to understand humanity's greatest asset, its engineers. These human minds, as capable of creating advanced warships as they were of devising new ways to fight, had become the real key to the conflict. If the Zorathians could break this spirit of innovation, they could finally crush humanity's defenses. While the Zorathian fleet regrouped and prepared for their next strike, humanity had its own pressing concerns. Earth's commanders knew that the Zorathians weren't going to give up easily. If anything, the retreat had only given them time to regroup and plan. The Zorathians weren't just a military force, they were a species with a deep understanding of warfare and strategy. But humanity had learned something crucial in those first battles. They weren't the same as their previous enemies. The key was the engineers. In the meantime, humanity's top minds gathered in secret to prepare for the next phase of the war. The engineers who had developed the technology for Earth's fleet were called upon to find new ways to fortify their defenses and keep the alien invaders at bay. But this was not just about designing better weapons, it was about outsmarting the Zorathians in every possible way. They didn't need to match the Zorathian power. They needed to think beyond it. Meanwhile, the Zorathians, convinced that the engineers were the true threat, began to target Earth's industrial and research hubs. They launched small, tactical raids on human colonies, trying to eliminate the very resources that fueled the engineers' creativity. They hoped that if they destroyed the workshops and laboratories, where human minds were at work, they could break the cycle of innovation that had thwarted them so far. But once again, they underestimated humanity. Each time the Zorathians struck, the engineers found ways to circumvent their attacks, to keep the vital resources safe, and even to use the alien strikes as a way to improve their own designs. It became clear to the Zorathians that their strategy was not working. No matter how many attacks they launched, no matter how many colonies they destroyed, humanity's engineers simply used those very challenges to fuel their creativity. Every setback became an opportunity for improvement, and the engineers began to design new technologies at an accelerating pace. The Zorathians' attempt to cut off humanity's creative resources had only made the engineers more resourceful. Humanity's ability to adapt, to use its very limitations as stepping stones toward progress, was beginning to show the Zorathians just how little they understood about the human spirit. The aliens, once so confident in their superiority, were now caught in a battle of wits they had never expected. What had started as a war of firepower was now a test of willpower, and humanity's engineers were proving to be the most dangerous weapon in the galaxy. Months had passed since the initial victories, and while the Zorathians were not quick to admit defeat, their confidence was starting to crumble. The retreat after their first engagement had only been a temporary setback, and now they were preparing for their next move, a final, decisive strike meant to crush humanity's fleet and seize control of Earth once and for all. This time, however, they would not be launching an all-out assault with brute force. Instead, the Zorathians had devised a plan that they believed would trap humanity in a way they couldn't escape. An asteroid field filled with gravitational anomalies, hidden mines, and strategic choke points designed to isolate and destroy the human warships. The Zorathians thought this would be their trump card. They had studied human tactics and knew that Earth's fleet had not yet encountered a situation quite like this. The asteroid field was chaotic, unpredictable, and filled with enough natural hazards that even the most advanced warships might find it difficult to navigate. The mines were designed to evade detection, lying in wait for a single misstep, ready to detonate with catastrophic force. The Zorathians were confident that even the ingenuity of humanity's engineers would falter in such a hostile environment. As the Zorathian fleet moved into position, they sent out a series of probes to begin testing the terrain, ensuring that the human fleet would be caught off guard. The Zorathians had all but sealed the trap, and their commanders eagerly awaited the moment when the first human ships would fly into the asteroid field and become ensnared by their traps. They knew that once the human fleet entered the field, there would be no escape. However, the Zorathians had underestimated one critical factor: the adaptability of human engineering. Earth's engineers, ever attuned to the potential for unexpected threats, had already anticipated this move. The very features that the Zorathians had assumed would trap the human ships, the anomalies, and the mines had already been studied by human scientists and engineers. In fact, a special task force of engineers had already been assigned to develop countermeasures, even before the Zorathians had deployed their fleet to the area. As the human warships entered the asteroid field, the Zorathians watched with growing satisfaction, certain that victory was at hand. But within moments, their optimism began to fade. Human ships moved through the field with a grace and precision that defied expectations. The mines that had been hidden so carefully were detected almost instantly by specialized sensors, and the warships skillfully navigated around them. The gravitational anomalies that were meant to cause confusion were accounted for in real time, with the ships adapting their trajectory with ease. Where the Zorathians had hoped to trap humanity, the engineers had already prepared the human fleet to conquer the very obstacles that had been set in their path. The Zorathians watched in disbelief as human warships cut through the asteroid field, avoiding danger with an almost uncanny precision. The very forces that had been designed to cause chaos were now working in humanity's favor. The alien fleet had relied on the notion that humans would be out of their depth in such an environment. But what they failed to realize was that human engineering didn't just solve problems, it anticipated them. Every calculation, every possible outcome, had been considered, and Earth's engineers had already equipped the warships with technology capable of overcoming even the most unpredictable scenarios. Frustration began to mount in the Zorathian ranks. What had been a carefully planned trap, designed to exploit a perceived weakness, had turned into a showcase of human ingenuity. As the human ships emerged from the asteroid field unscathed, their adaptability had once again proven to be their greatest strength. The Zorathians, realizing they had once again underestimated their enemy, had no choice but to retreat once more, leaving the battlefield in shame. But the question lingered: How could humanity's engineers be stopped when they seemed to anticipate every move the aliens made? What the Zorathians didn't yet understand was that every failure, every retreat, only fueled the human engineers' determination to outthink them again. And with each setback, the Zorathians were learning the hard way that human ingenuity was the one thing they could never predict. As the war raged on, the Zorathians grew more desperate. Their repeated attempts to crush humanity's fleet had failed, each time due to the unexpected brilliance of Earth's engineers. The alien invaders had come to recognize that their greatest enemy wasn't just the human warships, but the minds behind them, the very engineers who had designed the technology that allowed humanity to survive and thrive in the face of impossible odds. In a desperate bid to break the cycle, the Zorathians devised a new strategy, one that aimed to cripple the heart of humanity's technological strength, the engineers themselves. This new plan was subtle but deadly. Rather than launching a massive assault on human colonies or attempting another battle with the fleet, the Zorathians sought to infiltrate Earth's engineering and research communities. They knew that by targeting the creators, the brilliant minds that had turned the tide in their favor, they could cripple humanity's ability to innovate and adapt. Their goal was simple: to eliminate the people who made it possible for Earth to fight back. Under the guise of diplomatic outreach, the Zorathians began to send covert agents to key human cities, infiltrating the scientific community and posing as allies or peaceful ambassadors. These agents, disguised as civilians or even scientists, embedded themselves within critical engineering hubs, sabotaging research, stealing data, and planting false information. They aimed to sow distrust among humanity's engineers, to create confusion, and ultimately, to derail the innovation that had become humanity's greatest weapon. At first, the sabotage went unnoticed. Human engineers continued their work, unaware that some of their colleagues were working against them. Infiltration and subterfuge had always been part of warfare, but this was something different. The Zorathians were attacking humanity's very foundation, attempting to distort the flow of knowledge and creativity that had been the source of Earth's resilience. But as the months went on, cracks began to appear in the Zorathian plan. The engineers, ever vigilant, started to notice inconsistencies in their work. Designs didn't match the specifications they had created, and some of the data they had gathered seemed to be tampered with. What the Zorathians hadn't accounted for was the deep-rooted collaboration among Earth's engineers. With communication and sharing of ideas central to their culture, the inconsistencies quickly became apparent. Groups of engineers across the world, sharing their findings, began to piece together the puzzle. It wasn't long before humanity's leaders realized what was happening. The sabotage, though clever, had failed to achieve its goal of destroying the creativity that fueled human advancement. Instead, it had only sparked a renewed determination to push forward. In response to the infiltration, the engineers strengthened their security protocols and worked even more collaboratively. The attacks only made them more focused, more united in their efforts to protect their innovations and safeguard the future of humanity. To the Zorathians' dismay, the result of their sabotage was the opposite of what they had hoped. Instead of slowing down progress, they had accelerated it. The very engineers they had targeted now redoubled their efforts, improving their designs, tightening their security, and creating even more advanced technologies to counter the alien threat. Humanity's response to the Zorathian infiltration was swift, and they soon developed new methods for detecting and neutralizing covert agents, making it nearly impossible for the aliens to operate undetected. What the Zorathians failed to understand was that the human spirit could not be broken by mere sabotage. The engineers' ability to think, to innovate, and to adapt was not just a tool of war. It was a fundamental part of humanity's identity. The Zorathians had underestimated the sheer resilience and tenacity of the human race. They had thought they could weaken humanity by targeting its creators, but they had only made them stronger. And with every attempt to cripple Earth's ability to innovate, they were only driving humanity closer to a breakthrough that would ultimately lead to their downfall. The Zorathians, still reeling from the failure of their infiltration, were now forced to confront an uncomfortable truth. They had underestimated the depth of humanity's resolve. Earth's engineers had not only thwarted their sabotage, they had transformed adversity into opportunity. The Zorathian strategy of undermining human ingenuity had failed. And once again, the humans had proven that they were not so easily defeated. The Zorathians, now deeply frustrated by their repeated failures to defeat humanity, found themselves trapped in a cycle they couldn't escape. Every time they thought they had discovered humanity's weak point, they learned that their enemies had already anticipated the move. No matter how powerful their fleet was, no matter how many tactics they tried, humanity's engineers always found a way to adapt, innovate, and stay one step ahead. But in their arrogance, the Zorathians still believed they had one final trump card: the ability to overwhelm Earth's defenses with sheer numbers. In a desperate bid to end the war once and for all, the Zorathians decided to escalate the conflict to a level humanity had never faced before. They gathered their most advanced warships, assembled an enormous fleet, and set their sights on Earth. It was not just an invasion, it was an annihilation. The plan was simple: use the sheer weight of their numbers to crush humanity's warships and invade the planet before the engineers could develop any new countermeasures. With the warships alone, the Zorathians believed they could finally finish what they had started. As the alien fleet entered Earth's solar system, the sheer scale of the assault was enough to make even the most seasoned human commanders uneasy. It wasn't just the firepower of the ships that was frightening, it was the overwhelming numbers. Thousands of ships, each capable of obliterating entire cities, advanced toward Earth with terrifying speed. The Zorathian leadership had calculated that the human fleet, no matter how technologically advanced, wouldn't be able to face such a vast armada head-on. They expected Earth to collapse under the weight of their might. But what the Zorathians had failed to understand was that humanity's greatest strength was never in sheer force. It was in the ability to find solutions where others saw only obstacles. The engineers, having already seen the incoming assault, went into overdrive, working tirelessly to develop a countermeasure that would tip the balance of the war once again. Rather than matching the Zorathian ship for ship, humanity's engineers focused on disrupting the very core of the alien fleet's advantage: coordination. By studying the enemy fleet's movements, the engineers realized that the Zorathians relied heavily on precise communication between their ships. If they could disrupt that communication, the vast fleet would become fragmented, unable to function as one cohesive unit. The engineers quickly began developing a new type of electronic warfare system, one that would jam the Zorathian communication network and sever their ability to coordinate. In the final hours before the battle began, humanity's engineers completed the system. It was a gamble, a bold move that relied on timing and precision. The engineers deployed the system across their fleet, and when the Zorathian armada reached the outskirts of Earth's defenses, it was activated. Almost immediately, the alien ships began to lose their cohesion. Orders that had once been synchronized were now delayed or lost altogether. The Zorathians' vast numbers, which had once seemed like an unstoppable force, began to turn against them. Instead of a seamless wave of destruction, the Zorathian fleet found itself scattered and confused, ships colliding with each other, attacking their own forces in the chaos. What had been a carefully orchestrated assault was now reduced to a disorganized mess, with Zorathian ships isolated and vulnerable. Human warships, once outnumbered, took advantage of the chaos, striking at the now disoriented alien vessels with precision and agility. The engineers had once again outsmarted the enemy by forcing them into a situation where their superior numbers were rendered useless. The Zorathians, shocked by the sudden turn of events, scrambled to regain control, but it was too late. The battle had been won, and the Zorathians, for the first time, understood the true power of humanity's greatest asset: the ability to think and adapt when faced with overwhelming odds. What had started as a war of firepower had become a war of intellect, and once again, humanity had proven that it was the true force to be reckoned with. With their fleet in disarray and their plans shattered, the Zorathians were forced to retreat, leaving Earth in peace at least for now. But the lesson was clear: humanity could not be defeated through sheer strength alone. It was the ingenuity of its engineers, the relentless drive to innovate and overcome, that had turned the tide of the war. And the Zorathians, for all their power and might, would have to rethink their entire approach to dealing with Earth's greatest weapon. The retreat of the Zorathian fleet marked a turning point in the war. But it wasn't just the victory itself that made it so significant, it was the realization that humanity had changed the very nature of the conflict. For the first time, The alien invaders fully understood that they weren't dealing with just a species capable of fighting back. They were facing an adversary that could outthink them, outsmart them, and turn the tide of battle not with strength, but with creativity. The Zorathians had come to Earth, believing they could impose their will with force, but what they hadn't expected was humanity's ability to turn every challenge into an opportunity for innovation. As the Zorathian fleet retreated into the depths of space, their leadership was left in disarray, questioning what had gone wrong. They had underestimated the human spirit and the brilliance of the engineers who had fueled that spirit. But more than that, they had failed to understand that the war wasn't just about firepower. It was about the ability to adapt to an ever-changing battlefield. For every strategy the Zorathians deployed, there was a human engineer somewhere already working on a solution, crafting a countermeasure, and turning the impossible into something achievable. The human engineers, having witnessed the Zorathian retreat, took a moment to reflect on their success. It wasn't the end of the war, but it was a clear sign that they had gained the upper hand. The Zorathian fleet had been shattered not by overwhelming force, but by the human capacity to think, to design, and to innovate under pressure. With each battle, the engineers refined their strategies, learning from the mistakes of the past and constantly improving. It was a never-ending cycle of adaptation, and humanity was proving time and again that it could outpace its enemies. While Earth's military leaders celebrated the victory, the engineers continued their work, driven not by a sense of triumph, but by the knowledge that the war was far from over. The Zorathians had suffered a heavy defeat, but they were not a species to give up easily. They would regroup, reassess, and come back with a new strategy. Humanity's engineers knew that the next wave of attacks would be even more dangerous, but they also knew that they had the tools to face whatever came next. And yet, despite the uncertainty of the future, there was a renewed sense of hope among the human people. The engineers had not just defended their home, they had redefined the nature of warfare itself. They had shown that even against a technologically superior force, creativity, innovation, and resilience could tip the scales in their favor. This victory, though hard-won, had proven that humanity's greatest weapon wasn't its warships, its armies, or its resources. It was the boundless potential of the human mind. As Earth returned to a tense peace, the world looked toward the future, knowing that the Zorathians, though temporarily defeated, would return. But the message had been sent. The Zorathians were no longer the unquestioned masters of the galaxy. They had faced humanity's engineers and realized that Earth was not a planet to be conquered by brute force. It was a planet where the impossible could be made possible, where every setback became a stepping stone towards something greater. And for the Zorathians, that was the most terrifying thought of all. No matter what they threw at humanity, no matter how many times they tried to overpower them, humanity's engineers would always be ready, always evolving, always adapting, and always one step ahead. The war was far from over, but humanity had already won the most important battle. They had proven that their ingenuity, their creativity, and their unwavering determination would always prevail. The Zorathians may have feared humanity's warships, but they had learned to fear something even more, the minds that built them. Humanity's greatest weapon isn't just our ships, it's our relentless drive to innovate, adapt, and overcome. Through the brilliance of our engineers, we have shown the galaxy that Earth is not a planet to be underestimated. Thank you for watching. Make sure to like, comment, and subscribe for more incredible stories from the edge of the universe.